Welcome back to Impossible Color. This week's video is part 2 of the Emergence Portrait Makeover. You're welcome to jump right in, but I recommend checking out part 1 first if you haven't already. Now we're going to duplicate this twice and we're going to do frequency separation. So this will be our low layer and our high layer. And on the low layer, we're going to blur with roughly a value of 5 or 6 depending on your image. And the high layer, we're going to apply the image to subtract to the layer below it. And on the low layer, we're going to use a brush tool and just kind of sample and smooth out your skin. Just constantly keep on sampling and painting out nice, smooth gradients of tone. Just trying to normalize the skin. Get nice even tones everywhere. And have a good look at it from a distance. Now we're going to do some blurring as well. Just grab little samples of like tones and give it a little Gaussian blur. And you don't have to worry about losing your texture because all of that will be preserved on the high layer. So these are just the kind of the base tones. Work your way through all of the skin, smoothing it out. If you want to, you could use this technique for clothing as well. Great way to remove blemishes and even just funky shadows and lighting problems on your skin. Now on the high layer, these will be the really fine details on the image and I'm using the spot removal tool to get rid of those spots. Now the model doesn't really look like this, but it kind of gives you a really exaggerated view of those little imperfections. If you turn back on your low layer, you see the nice combination of the two of them together. Could do, looks like I missed a little spot here on the low layer to smooth that out. And gonna work on the background as well. I see a lot of bright spots that are breaking up the trees in the background here, and I think they're just distracting from the image, so I'm going to fill those up. You can use all different tools here. You can paint or use the patch tool, spot removal tool. I've got a whole tutorial on removing background clutter if you want more details on this. Now on the high layer, I'm going to get rid of some of these fine details and wrinkles that are on the dress. And some of the stray hairs that are popping out on the top of her head. Just clean that up a little bit. Using the spot removal tool, and we'll also use the straight up paint tool on the low layer as well. So this frequency separation is dealing with the low and the high separately so you can get the best of both. I'm going to merge all of those changes together and fix up any little spots that we see. I'm using the brush tool just with color as the blending mode. Just trying to normalize some of the colors in the background here. And these little branches on the edges of the frame are really bugging me, so I'm going to select those and fill it with content aware. And it usually does a pretty good job of removing that. You may have to do it a few different times. And I'm just going to use the straight up paint tool, the brush tool set to normal. And because the background is so even, you can easily just paint this out and just try to draw a little less focus. And I'm going to delete all of those changes so far, just so we're working fresh. And we're going to start to do some more curves, color adjustments. I like to anchor the middle most of the time and alter each side. And our blue as well. Again, I'm usually going opposites on the dark and the light side. Going to merge a copy of those two together. And I'm going to go apply image, set to multiply, and apply it to high layer, which is the merge of everything. And this, I'm going to do this for sharpening. So if I go to stylize, find edges, get a nice crisp outline, and I'm going to invert it. So you should see a white outline, and I'm going to exaggerate that so it's really sharp and crisp. And this is going to be our selection that we're going to do for the sharpen. But it didn't do it perfectly. We don't want to sharpen all the details of the face and the skin, and the background as well. So I'm just going to paint those out. It's really important to, when you're doing your sharpening, to have a layer mask like this so that you're not being destructive. So basically you just want the edges to pop. You don't want tiny imperfections of the skin super sharp. So I'm going to run my Unsharp on the layer. Just make sure you have your layer selected and not your mask. And if you want to, you can set it to luminosity. Sometimes sharpen makes your colors really bright and weird around the edges. So we'll call that after and call this before. So lots of changes so far, but we're not done yet. So we go back to Adobe Camera Raw. We're just going to load up the original so you can see the changes so far. Now we're going to do some really cool color effects. So if you go to do a gradient adjustment layer and set it to radial, and make sure your warmer colors on the inside and a cooler color on the outside. And I'm going to do kind of a halo effect here that's going to draw a nice warmth to the center of the image. You can adjust the colors a little bit, and you can change their slider values too if you'd like. I'm going to adjust the blending mode. If you just select one and then you tab down with your arrows, you can keep changing it. So right now I have it on overlay. And with on the layer mask, I'm going to paint away the areas that I don't want. I don't want it applied directly to the skin of the model, so I'm going to mask this out. And just blend it in a little bit so it has a natural flow. You can adjust the opacity as much as you like. Sometimes it's good to turn it on all the way just as you're working so you can get an idea of where your positioning is. And you can keep changing your blending modes, try out a lot of different ones, try them out at different opacities. There's a lot of trial and error that takes place when you're working with colors like this. And the nice thing about the adjustment layer is you can move the spot whenever you like. So I can move that glow to the center, change the scale of it at any point. And I really like the look of this. I'm gonna blur my layer mask a little bit. I don't want to be caught with some sharp edges anywhere. So a Gaussian blur will just ensure that it's nice and smooth. And play with the opacity a little bit. Right now I have it set to soft light as the blending mode. And we're going to do a hue saturation adjustment layer to adjust these flowers as well on top of the head. Now I'm going to apply it with a layer mask. I'm going to just paint the areas where I want it to change. So I started off with orange, thinking that that might be the ideal look. But then eventually I decided that I wanted to change it to white. So first I played around with different hues, and then the saturation, and then eventually the lightness, and decided on matching it just white like the other flowers. Keep it nice and simple. Now with this adjustment layer, you could go back at any point and change these sliders and change it an infinite number of times that you want. So you see I have it select to just yellows.
This concludes part 2 of the Emergence Portrait Makeover. Thanks for checking out Impossible Color. Please drop by our Facebook page sometime at facebook.com/impossiblecolor, where you get to see a lot of before and after photo edits. Also, if you liked the video, please show your support by clicking thumbs up or subscribing with the green button below. See you next week.